All right, welcome back to the Kip and Chip Sports Podcast. It's been since I think the last one was September that we recorded. It's been way too long. But thank you for your patience, all you listeners out there. I'm sure no one really missed us that bad, but we're happy to be back. But welcome to the show. Congratulations to the graduate, Drew. You want to give us a little update on what you've been up to?
How'd you know I graduated?
For those of you who are listening on audio, Drew is wearing full cap and gown right now on the video feed. So watch this on YouTube.
I just haven't taken it off since I walked across the stage. Sometimes I just forget that I still have it on, I guess. I know I'm kidding, but I'm excited for my first doctoral podcast. See how it feels compared to my baccalaureate podcast that I'd done in the past. So we'll see how it goes.
Seems like your vocabulary already improved from that degree, so good job. All right. Well, you want to introduce our first segment for today?
Yeah, so obviously tons has happened in the NFL since we last recorded. Most recently was one of the saddest Packers Sundays I've had in a long, long time. Just a lot of despair, I'd say, more than anything, was my main emotion on Sunday. And I tweeted this out as well on Sunday night, and I still stand by it. As a Packers fan, whatever emotion you felt on Sunday and the ensuing couple days that have come since is totally valid. I mean, whether it's despair, whether it's anger, whether it's excitement that you still think they can compete for the rest of the season, it's all valid. And I think we all grieve in our own way. And for me, I feel like this team was a team that I thought had true Super Bowl chances before the Micah Parsons injury and the other, slew of injuries that the Packers sustained on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And to me, those injuries kind of signal what I feel like is ceremonially the end of the Packers' Super Bowl chances for this season. And that's really sad to me. And the way I cope with this is, as a sports fan, I try to be happy, I try to be positive. And so the way I'm coping with it is choosing to still be excited about the games we have left, but also looking forward to the future, because I think the Packers do have a really bright future even with these injuries. Mm-hmm. But that's how I'm feeling with it. How are you feeling with it, Sam, after the game on Sunday?
I think there was so much going on that my first feeling was just shock that it actually happened. And then that whole night I was just trying to be positive about it, not be too overly depressed. But then the next day, just reading tweets and kind of accepting the gravity of the situation, I was pretty sad that morning after the game. But then also seeing some positive injury updates helped a lot. Like Christian Watson, that looked really bad, but he practiced today, and seems like he might be a game-time decision for this game against the Bears, despite having a short week. So, I mean, I'm not honestly expecting him to play, but knowing that he might be back for, the end of the season, the playoffs, that helps. Evan Williams doesn't seem like it's anything super, super scary. Same as Zach Tom. So, I mean, sucks about Micah Parsons, and I agree with you. Our Super Bowl chances dropped considerably. There's still chance we have some serious magic and things go our way, but it's all about beating the MF and Bears.
What does that stand for? Yeah. I was thinking, if you're to go back and look at kind of like the most recent, say the last decade and a half, Packers heartbreaks, mm-hmm. I would rank Sunday in Denver up there with some of the playoff losses that they've gone through. Yeah. Like, let's compare Sunday in Denver with the loss and all the injuries, and compare that to the Packers in San Francisco, Jordan Love's first year as a starter, when they were winning going into the fourth quarter and ended up blowing that game. Which is more heartbreaking to you as a Packers fan?
I feel like this. I don't know. I might still say that just because it was a playoff game and we looked like we might make it to the Super Bowl. That sucked. I just go back to that Aaron Jones play where he had the streak down the sideline and ran out of bounds, or he had that big run and ran out of bounds. Stuff like that, where it's just I hate watching highlights from a game like that we totally blew. So honestly,
Yeah.
probably still that, but it's definitely up there in that conversation.
Yeah, I think so too. And I know it's a regular season game, but there's not many teams that I felt like have been truly Super Bowl quality that didn't end up going to the Super Bowl for the Packers. I think of 2014, that team that lost to Seattle in the NFC Championship game. That's probably the best Rodgers team there ever was. And then I think 2020 when they lost to Tampa Bay in the championship game.
Yeah.
That team was Super Bowl quality. If Bakhtiari doesn't tear his ACL, they win the Super Bowl that year. I will go to my grave saying that. And then I think since then, this is the first team where I felt like they really had as good a shot as anybody to win the Super Bowl. And it just sucks, man. It makes me so sad. And I'm still processing it. So if you can hear my grief, kind of the 5 stages coming out through my voice throughout this next hour or so, that's why I'm still going through it.
For those of you listening, hoping to get a bit of hope after this, and you're coming to this podcast for us to show some positivity, you might not be getting that in this episode. But this is good for us. We're gonna obviously focus on some positives, but just for us being able to talk together and grieve about the Bucs and the Packers right now, I think is important for us.
Yeah. And I mean, we tend to put a positive spin on things, but I think, like I said earlier, the positive spin is going to be for the future, not for this year.
Yeah. But we're going to get into some specific things, but how are you going to feel if the Packers beat the Bears by 2 touchdowns this week?
Let's get into it. So I think the Bears game is going to tell everything we need to know about how this new team is going to look for the rest of the season. We're going to know by the end of Saturday night.
Yeah.
There's so much that changes with the injuries that happened, because there's some pretty key injuries. Let's start with Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons has covered up defensive deficiencies on this roster in a way that we haven't seen in Green Bay since those Aaron Rodgers teams. Remember those Aaron Rodgers teams where they'd be starting Evan Dietrich Smith or just random players on the offensive line, and James Jones wearing a hoodie would be the number 1 wide receiver. He'd still throw for 35 touchdowns a year, and it was just there was nothing on the roster that was good other than Aaron Rodgers. It's not to that extent because there's a lot of really good talent in Green Bay on the defense, but there's some real deficiencies that he's covered up. Mm-hmm. And I think cornerback 2, when I say cornerback 2, I give Carrington Valentine a pass. I think he's a good corner. And I call him our quarterback 1.
Yeah.
But man, there's some problems with Nixon. And Hobbs has been a serious problem whenever he plays out there too. But then the defensive line as well. Have you really noticed anyone this year that's really consistently made plays other than Micah Parsons? Or anybody who consistently really seems like they're playing their heart out on the defensive line other than Micah Parsons?
Yeah, the next guy for me would be Devontae Wyatt. But even then didn't have that good of a year until he got hurt. He was just our most experienced defensive lineman out there. But yeah, no.
Yeah. At the beginning of the year, I wrote a piece before the Parsons trade happened, trying to be positive about the outlook of the pass rush. Mm-hmm. And I wrote about how I thought Rashawn Gary could bounce back. And if he did bounce back, the pass rush would end up being fine and potentially even top 10. Everything I wrote that I was hopeful about in that article has not come true. He has been... He confused a lot of people because he had a lot of cleanup sacks to start the year. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if you saw that stat circulating online. He hasn't had a sack or a tackle for loss in the last 7 games.
Yeah.
And it's just how many times do you see Bo Nix or Caleb Williams break the pocket and he's just loafing out there. Like he's either out of shape and just deconditioned, or he's just nowhere near the athlete he was when he was drafted.
Yeah, we talked about it when we were FaceTime during the game. Those plays where you'd see Rashawn Gary in pursuit, and then all of a sudden Micah Parsons is 15 yards behind him and just passes him, almost gets to the quarterback.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's an athleticism, it's a speed thing, but it's 100% effort thing too.
Mm-hmm. And the thing too is the reason Gary was drafted so high, if you remember, he was kind of like, he was kind of like a, I don't want to say poor man's, but kind of like a poor man's Shamar Stewart, where the production was not there. The reason he was drafted top 15 by the Packers is because his athleticism numbers were insane. Like, he was a combine killer that got drafted, and you would say, like, turned into a really good player. But we know that Gary relies on that. Like, if he's not playing like an elite athlete, what else does he do, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's not a technician. He's not a bendy, flexible athlete. If he's not busting off the ball and knocking people back with his speed to power, why is he out there? And he's not in good shape. He comes off the field multiple times every drive, it seems. I wrote before the season, I was trying to be as positive about Rashawn Gary as I could, and it's just not been there.
Yeah.
And then the other guys that I feel like it has been there for, like Lucas Van Ness, I mean, the numbers kind of show it. They don't totally show a full breakout, but he was better at the beginning of the year, and I think a lot of Packers fans felt like, and rightfully so, he was starting to kind of round into form until he hurt his foot. Mm-hmm. And he hasn't really played at all since then. Devontae Wyatt was great until he got hurt, and now he's got a broken leg. Outside of Parsons, what else was there?
Yeah.
And I think we're going to feel that in a way that, especially against a good Bears offensive line, Williams is going to have all day, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Yep, I agree with that. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about too, is how you keep seeing stuff about him being a Defensive Player of the Year finalist the last few weeks, and it's going to be Myles Garrett who's going to win that. But yeah, even if he only had like 6 sacks, I feel like he should still be a finalist because he's, like you said, covered up all the weaknesses of everyone else on that defense and made them, a true top 10 defense. So, but the dude had 12.5 sacks. That's what makes me so happy, and also sad that he got hurt, is that we made a trade that actually panned out well, even though he got hurt. But I was so scared when we traded for him that he was going to all of a sudden suck and everyone's going to be flaming us all the time. But he was the exact same version of himself this year and was so good for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be tough. But the one thing I do kind of go back to is last year towards the end of the season, they didn't have Micah Parsons, but Hafley still, threw out an above-average defense. Not an elite defense, but an above-average defense. And I think one of the things you saw is he felt pretty hamstrung by the people he had on the field. And due to those personnel deficiencies, he was throwing everything at the wall that he could.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to go back to seeing that, where a lot more of Edgerrin Cooper blitzes. You're going to see a lot more Quay Walker up the A-gap. You'll probably see a lot more sim pressures where guys like Lucas Van Ness were dropping into coverage. They were generally more aggressive last year in their zones, and I feel like they don't have the luxury to sit back and defend against the big play like they have for most of the season.
Yeah. Because
their corners aren't sticky enough, and their pass rush is never going to get there. So they've got to be aggressive. If you're a Packers fan listening to this, be aware that going forward, there's going to be more big plays surrendered by the team, because they're going to have to just pull out all the stops to try and get any sort of opportunity to get off the field. And it's going to be pretty boom or bust is where I'm feeling going from here.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. The only bright spot that comes from this is that Halfley might not look quite as good in the next few weeks and doesn't get hired as a head coach to go somewhere else.
Yeah. And I'm not going to say it's worth it, but if that does happen, it's almost worth it.
Yeah, that would suck to have to look for a new coordinator.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, back to the Bears game. I have a lot of concerns. That being the main one is Caleb Williams is going to be able to just run free. But if the Packers can pull out a win, it changes everything. Changes everything for the next few games. If they can win handily somehow, then, I mean, the Bears I wouldn't say are a Super Bowl contender, but it really makes you start to have faith again. And I'm sure the Packers players you could see it in the press conferences after the last game. Obviously, they were bummed about the loss, but they were all thinking about Micah. Rashawn Gary was choking up just talking about it. It was hard to watch, but you know that they took a couple days to grieve. But then seeing Micah Parsons, I'm sure he had conversations with his teammates, but seeing what he posted online, I'll be back for September 1st, and posting all this stuff about how he's going to hit it hard, and I'm sure the players just got pissed off throughout the week, and they're able to focus on this Bears game, and I'm sure they're going to go out there and win it for them. At least try their best. So I don't know. It's got me excited these last few days, just looking forward to the game on Saturday.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm going to kind of reserve my judgment for the team going forward until after the game on Saturday.
Yeah.
But I do have a couple other injury things I want to hit just real quick. Pay attention to what they do now that Evan Williams isn't playing. I'm at the end of the game last week. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
At the end of the game last week, after Williams was out, I thought it was really interesting. They kept Bullard and Hobbs rotating in the slot and brought in Zane Anderson to play deep safety.
Yeah.
I feel like that probably won't be what they do, but in the past when Bullard has to play deep safety, it has not gone well.
Yeah.
So pay attention to that. There's another reason to think the Bears might be able to stretch the field a little better than they did the first time they played. And then the other one is Christian Watson. I think the offense is going to have to carry a huge load the rest of the season if they want to win.
Mm-hmm.
And Christian Watson and Josh Jacobs' health is incredibly important to that. And just a little sidebar on Watson's injury. So there's a joint right here where your clavicle, your collarbone connects to your sternum. And that's the joint that he injured and was rushed to the hospital for it. The reason that happens is because this joint is extremely stable. You almost never injure that joint. But when it does, there's a chance it could dislocate backwards. And if that happens, then you have a sharp collarbone that's poking into like your area where you have your throats right there, your arteries, it could puncture a lung. So there's a reason that almost never happens, but when it does, it's a huge deal. And the fact that that's the injury that happened, the Packers would be really, really stupid and dangerous, honestly, to send him out there unless they feel like that is totally intact and totally stable. So the idea of Christian Watson playing this week is really, really wild to me. And honestly, for his safety, I almost hope that it doesn't happen. Yeah. And he totally changes the offense.
Yeah.
I mean, we can say, all right, Dobbs or Golden, it's time for you to step up, but nobody stretches the field, but also beats man coverage in the short and intermediate route while also blocking in the run game like Watson does on his team. So if he's out, player. He is. And if he's out, I would look for a lot more gadget type plays, and just LaFleur's going to have to empty the bag.
Yeah. Yeah, you're totally right in saying it's going to be up to the offense to figure this out. And honestly, good. Put some pressure on them, and it's been better the last few weeks with the play calling. They're letting Jordan rip it. Obviously, that first pick he threw last week was pretty bad, but the second one, again, probably his fault, throwing the ball behind Wicks, and it got picked off. But I'm here for it. I don't like seeing Jordan Love have 3 interceptions because it feels like I think that's how many he had on the season before this last game, 3 or 5 or something like that. But I kind of like seeing him have 10 because it means they're trusting him to throw the ball down the field. And so I've liked that the last few weeks. But, yeah, it's going to put some pressure on the offense, and I think it's about time that it's up to them to put some big scoring games on the board. Um, but I also wanted to put in a little plug about Matthew Golden. So many fans are talking about how he's a bust. A lot of fans are saying we should have drafted Luther Burden, stuff like this. Shut up with that crap. It's so annoying because Golden dealt with that wrist injury for quite a while. Like, he's been held out for several weeks, so his stats obviously aren't going to look good. I called it at the beginning of the season when I said, hey, last year they had an incredible player in Edgerrin Cooper, and they kept him on a snap count like the whole season until the very end, and then we're like, okay, this guy's legit. That's
You
exactly
did call that.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did with Golden, and I think every game that he's gotten reps, he gets open. Even if he doesn't get the ball, he's running great routes. He's got good hands. That catch last game was sweet as he was falling out of bounds. So I'm excited for this. I think this is finally going to force them to play him a little more because finally, without Watson, if he's out, Golden seems to be fully healthy. I mean, that wrist is still nagging him a little bit, I think, but this is his time. And so I'm comparing it to Edgerrin Cooper last year, where the last few weeks of the season we're like, okay, this guy is going to be our number one dude next year. I'm excited. I'm feeling a big game from Matthew Golden. And just real quick, for those, we were talking about how, if Zane Anderson's playing deep, we might see more chunk plays. But Luther Burden and Roma Dunze both haven't practiced at all this week. So
have they missed 2 days of practice each?
Yeah, Tuesday and Wednesday, both DNPs.
Oh, wow.
So that's good news. It's going to be, I don't even remember who their third guy is. Well, DJ Moore, but other than that, I'm trying to remember who they even have. It's like Devin Duvernay or something.
Yeah, they've got Zacchaeus too.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how to say his first name, but you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. But yeah, they're going to be pounding the run for sure a lot in that game.
Yeah, that's true, especially with that offensive line and the guys we're missing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to... Do you know what the weather is?
I can check.
Hopefully it's cold.
Saturday, this is just Chicago weather, but it says 43 degrees as a high.
Oh, not bad.
Yeah, 18 as the low.
Okay. Well, you ready to move on to more optimistic stuff?
Yeah.
And I don't want to sound entitled when I say that too, because you know how there's Packers fans who are like, sometimes we as Packer fans have had it so good we take things for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be that guy. Like, making the playoffs, potentially winning the division is a big deal. But I want to think about Super Bowls too, especially because I think this team deserves it. And it looks to me like the best chance that they have at that is probably going to be next year, or at least a better chance than it is for the rest of this season.
Yeah.
So I just want to start by talking about the general manager, Brian Gutekunst. I think when it comes to evaluating the type of job he's done, one of the most important things to look at is the depth that he's built on the roster. And the depth that he's built is really pretty crazy. They have a large number of guys who are about to be unrestricted free agents next year. Really key contributors to the team. But in a second here, I'm going to read off the roster and what the roster would be like next year if all of those guys left, if none of them re-signed, and the Packers didn't draft or sign anybody in free agency.
Okay.
So just the guys that are under contract for 2026 already. But first I want to highlight, off the top of my head, correct me if I'm misremembering anybody, but the guys that are about to be free agents includes Quay Walker. Devontae Wyatt won't be because he's got a fifth-year option. Watson already re-signed. So we got Quay Walker, Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, Kingsley Enagbare, Rasheed Walker, Malik Willis, Romeo Dobbs. And then there's like a bunch of other small contracts, guys like Chris Brooks and Emmanuel Wilson and that kind of thing.
You said Zach Tom, but he already re-signed, right?
That's true. Yep, you got me on that one.
Yeah.
Good thing, right?
Yeah, thank goodness.
Okay, so I'm going to read off the roster here. So quarterback, the only quarterback they have under contract is Jordan Love. Running back, they have Josh Jacobs and Marshawn Lloyd. Tight end, Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. Wide receiver, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Matthew Golden, Dontavian Wicks, and Savion Williams. Starting center at this point would be Jacob Monk.
Ooh.
Left guard, Aaron Banks. Right guard, Anthony Belton. Right tackle, Zach Tom. Left tackle, Jordan Morgan. The reserve kind of backup offensive lineman would be Travis Glover, John Williams, Donovan Jennings. Defensive tackles would be Colby Wooden, Devontae Wyatt, Carl Brooks, Warren Brinson, and Nazir Stackhouse. So pretty much exactly what they have right now.
Mm-hmm.
Defensive ends, Micah Parsons, Lucas Van Ness, Barron Sorrell, Colin Oliver. Linebackers, Edgerrin Cooper, Isaiah McDuffie, Teron Hopper. Corners, Keyshawn Nixon, Carrington Valentine, Nate Hobbs, Kamal Haddon. And safety, McKinney, Evan Williams, Javon Bullard, and Katan Oladapo. And then they have all three of their specialists under contract already. And I've got to take this off. It's squeezing my head way too bad. Oh, I legit feel like my skull is numb right now. Like I'm touching my head up here, I can't really feel it. It's a weird sensation. Okay. So, after I just read that, what jumps out to you as like a big team need for going forward in 2026?
Definitely center. We saw in preseason Jacob Monk is ass. Edge, especially if Micah takes a little bit to come back.
He'll be back week 1. I would book that. He'll be back week 1.
Okay. Yeah, but even then, because did you already preface that you think that Rashawn Gary could get cut?
I forgot to preface that. 2 guys that are under contract technically for 2026, but I would almost guarantee or cut are Elton Jenkins and Rashawn Gary, and we can talk more about that later. But sorry to cut you off.
No, so if he's gonna get cut, as we're saying, yeah, I think that's a big need. Just getting someone in to fill Rashawn Gary's shoes, even if that is Van Ness that takes over that role, having someone to fill in for Van Ness's role off the bench. And I do like Sorrell a lot, and we haven't seen anything from Oliver. Maybe he's going to be our next Micah these next few weeks. But yeah, I do like those picks, but I think throwing another third-round pick or something at that edge group, something I like to think about, which positions do I feel like are good to be addressed in the draft and which are going to be good to be addressed in free agency, and I think we're going to touch on that more in a second. But edge is one where I think the draft is the best place to address that. I don't want to bring any Zadarius Smiths or guys like that, or Matthew Judon, but I want to go out and draft someone young and athletic. So yeah, that's a big one for me. Also, cornerback. I think that one's really obvious.
Yeah. You don't want Jadeveon Clowney on your team?
No.
Yeah. I'm with you there. I think O-line depth, like you talked about Jacob Monk, you definitely need a better starting center than that. Mm-hmm. But then I think you need depth as well, because if you get a starting center and one guy gets hurt, your 6th offensive lineman is probably Travis Glover. And we all remember what it looked like when Travis Glover had to go in the game against the Eagles last year in the playoffs. And that was horrific. So I think they need 3 more bodies at least on the offensive line. 1 of them to start, 2 of them to be backups. Could be in the draft or in free agency. And then the other big one is I think they really need an upgrade at defensive tackle. Like if they could somehow get someone better in a defensive tackle, I'd be really excited about that. I have a couple names to run by you.
Okay.
Let me get them pulled up here. Okay, so first I want to talk about the cap space. So if you go on Spotrac or Over the Cap or a lot of those websites, the numbers are not very accurate. The reason being the Packers have a ton of guys on rookie contracts right now who are getting a ton of playing time, playing really well, and they're going to get performance-based raises going into next season. And then there's also going to be guys that they extend, like a guy like Tucker Kraft. If I'm Tucker Kraft, I don't know if I even step on the practice field without an extension next season. The same could be said for Christian Watson too. Like he could ask for another extension, and I think that'd be really fair. You got to think about they're going to have to sign an incoming draft class. There's a lot of things that have to happen. So on Spotrac, I think it gives them like $30 million in cap space effectively, especially after they cut. Because Elton Jenkins is for sure going to get cut because he's due $24 million next year. But if they cut him, he's only due $4 million, and none of it is dead. Only that $4 million is dead cap. So they could save $20 million by cutting him. Yeah. And maybe there's a chance they're able to trade him. But I feel like most teams would recognize that he's basically a lock to get cut, and I don't know if they'll get any compensation back for him. Gary, on the other hand, they would save $11 million by cutting him. He's one I could see him being more of a trade candidate. Maybe some team offers like a 6th-round pick or a 5th-round pick or something. If I'm Brian Gutekunst, if some team offers me anything, even if it's a 7th-round pick, I would just take it. I would take it right away. So if they cut those guys, they would free up a little bit more cap space. And then you always kind of never know. Like, they could do simple restructures and kick some money down the road. I think they're going to easily be able to open up enough money to, keep a couple guys or go out and sign a couple guys. But they're not going to spend as much free agency money as they have in the last 2 seasons. So just kind of, even though Spotrac makes it look like they might be able to, just wrap your mind around that. They're not going to go on a major spending spree.
True.
Not that it worked out well for them last year anyway, but that's another story.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
We just got to look on, just focus on 2 years ago. Who they brought in.
Yeah, right. So I want to talk about some of these like upcoming free agents from the team and just kind of get your thoughts on them. First off, how are you feeling about, let's start with Rasheed Walker, what are the chances you think he's back next year?
I think pretty low. I was looking at the PFF scores, and he was like 42nd for tackles or something. So, not great, and I don't know, he's passed the eye test okay, I think, at times this year. But I think Jordan Morgan has been out of position a lot. And if you put those two toe-to-toe and watch them, if you rotated them snap for snap, Walker might look better right now at left tackle. But I think Jordan Morgan was drafted as a left tackle of the future. And I'm all for giving young guys opportunities rather than paying someone on a second contract that might demand a decent amount of money. So I'm feeling Jordan Morgan at left tackle and then drafting some more guys in the middle of the draft, or even bringing in a veteran swing tackle or someone. But I also really like Kennard. Kennard has been great as a backup right tackle. So is he a free agent too?
Yeah, I believe he's a restricted free agent, so he'll most likely be back.
Okay. Yeah, I would love to have him back. And then, get someone else on the margins to compete for that position, but he just seems a little too expensive for how good he is.
Yeah. So Spotrac has Rasheed Walker estimated to be worth $23 million next year.
Yeah, that's too much.
Yeah, way too much. And I'm with you. I mean, I've said it a million times on here. I'm a huge fan of Jordan Morgan. But Rasheed Walker right now leads the team in pressures allowed. He's allowed 23 pressures, which isn't it's not an obscene number, but it's the most on the team for a reason. He's been the worst pass blocker as far as pressure allowing on the team. But the spot where he really hurts the Packers is in the run game. And I'd encourage anybody to watch anytime the Packers try and run zone runs, specifically like stretch plays or outside zone runs to the left side. There's a reason it never works out, and that reason is largely Rasheed Walker. Because the left tackle, if you're going to run outside zone to the left tackle might have the most important assignment on the play.
Yeah.
And he if someone's shaded to his outside shoulder and he has to seal the edge and get to the outside, he just doesn't have the foot quickness and athleticism to get out there. But that is the exact type of play that Jordan Morgan is able to make. And so I get there might be deficiencies with Jordan Morgan, but I really don't think it's going to be that hard for Jordan Morgan to be as good as Rasheed Walker was this year.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be a ton of people over the summer who are going to be like, oh, the Packers offensive line could be a problem. They lost Rasheed Walker. He's making a ton of money somewhere else. Good player. Jordan Morgan's going to be just as good, if not better, than Rasheed Walker for 1/10 of the price.
I'm there with you on that one.
Yeah. So are we feeling like he's pretty much a goner?
Yeah, I would be shocked if they give him a deal.
Okay. So let's move on to one other guy. Interested to see how you're feeling about him. What are you thinking about Romeo Doubs?
Man, if you asked me this 6 or 7 weeks ago, I'd be like, we need to sign that guy. But 7. But yeah, I don't know. I would probably lean towards no at this point. He's kind of played himself out of the rotation. Seems kind of lazy. Just the emotional side of things that you shouldn't be having to worry about how your receiver is doing mentally on your football team. And so, I don't know. Sometimes he seems like such a happy, likable guy. Sometimes he seems like a cancer on the team. He's had some drops. Yeah, I've definitely gotten a lot lower on him in the last several weeks. But I also am a fan of Savion Williams. I'm a fan of Golden. Wicks, I still have hope for that guy. So up and down. Watson, obviously, but I think this is a group where they should address it by bringing in another mid-round draft pick. And that's another position I don't really like to sign free agents for, as wide receiver. I like getting draft picks. It seems like they always work out better. And so, yeah, that could be a 4th or 5th round pick that we think about in the draft and address it that way. But I think Dobbs should probably walk so that we can focus on extending Watson again.
Are you meaning to say that you weren't a fan of when the Packers addressed their wide receiver position by signing Sammy Watkins and Devin Funchess?
Oh, I forgot about Devin. If he wouldn't have gotten hurt in the offseason, we would have been so good that year.
They tried to switch him to tight end in the middle of the preseason. That was a funny year.
Yeah. Also,
go ahead.
I just wanted to say I totally forgot about Jaden Reed. I always leave that guy out when mentioning the receivers. And I love that guy.
Yeah. He might be the best one.
Yeah.
Who would you have? Money's not an option. Contract status isn't an option. Who do you think is going to be a better receiver in 2026, Romeo Doubs or Matthew Golden?
Matthew Golden.
Yeah. So there's your answer, right?
Yeah.
Because I really do feel like the receiver room may have a chance to get better if they... And I'm not saying Romeo Doubs is a bad player, but substituting his snaps with more Matthew Golden and maybe even more Dontavian Wicks is going to be good overall.
Yeah.
But
Agreed.
Spotrac has him listed as worth potentially up to $15 million next year. And I think it could even go north of that.
Yeah, someone's going to pay him.
Yeah. And keep in mind with all this, like, if Rasheed Walker and Romeo Doubs get paid that much, that's probably a 3rd and a 4th round comp pick, respectively, coming back to them in 27.
True.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to get into a couple guys who I feel like are really tough decisions. Because the Packers will probably have money to keep all of them if they really wanted to. But then it may severely restrict their ability to sign anybody else in free agency. So the next 3 I want to talk about are Quay Walker, Kingsley Enagbare, and Sean Ryan. So let's start with linebacker Quay Walker, because I want to get your thoughts. McDuffie's been good. We've seen a lot from McDuffie. We've seen a little bit from Hopper. We know Cooper's one guy that we can rely on and is going to be a stud, potential star type player. Does the rest of the linebacker room make you feel good enough that you feel like you can skimp out on Quay Walker, or do you need to keep him around on a long-term deal?
This one's touchy because you watch Quay Walker and you'll see him get burnt mentally. We've talked about this before. You just see him in the wrong spot on zone coverage or man, but then you see him in the run game. That dude's crazy. He's so important against the run. So rangy. Having a big linebacker, big tall linebacker like that in the middle of the field, I think makes it harder on quarterbacks. And when we've missed him, I think it's obvious. Yeah, McDuffie's been good, but I think it's pretty noticeable when he's not out there manning the defense. But at the same time, all the advanced stats, they hate Quay Walker. They nitpick him. Like PFF has him as like a 50 overall or something like that. Just really bad his whole career. He has not graded well. But I think he passes the eye test enough for me, and I think Hopper could be a good player, but he's played probably like 20 snaps all year. I don't know how many snaps he's played, but it feels like not very many. And so I think it's important they pay Quay. And I don't know how much it would cost. What does Spotrac say?
I don't know, but I feel like linebackers his level are all kind of right around the 12 to 15 per year. Like, I would not be surprised to see something like 4 years for $55 million or something like that. 4 years and 60. And I think that's totally fair. I feel like that linebacker duo outside of Micah and McKinney is like the one other thing that really sets the defense apart. And they'd be silly to break that up.
Yeah.
Like, you've even heard announcers talk about it. Like, other teams are just unable to get to the edge and stretch the field horizontally because those two guys are so fast and so rangy. Mm-hmm. And I'm with you on like the pass coverage stats that I'm sure he has. Like Quay Walker, Cooper's kind of doing it now too, but Quay Walker has never once consistently gotten deep enough into his zones. And I mean, there's a reason why the Packers are so easily targeted in the middle of the field.
Yeah.
But no linebacker's perfect. It's a really hard position to play. The coaches are constantly trying to put you in conflict and make you go multiple directions. Mm-hmm. I mean, the play action game doesn't make anything easier. I feel like he has enough that he does really, really well that I think the Packers would really miss it if they tried to just recreate him with McDuffie.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think I've already mentioned a few different positions that are important to address in the middle rounds of the draft. And they're just not going to have enough picks to be like, hey, let's just take a fifth-round linebacker to bring in here. Quay's a position they got to pay because we've seen how bad it is when the Packers have bad linebackers. Devondre Campbell days, I don't even have to say any words about that. It's just tough to watch the defense. So having a Quay Walker out there, even if he has some miscues, you can trust that he's going to be out there, be playing fast and hard and give good effort. So I think he's worth the money, even if it's a slight overpay.
Yeah. One other thing I'll touch on. If the team feels like they're already, if they're allocating too much money to the linebacker position, the sneaky cut candidate is actually Isaiah McDuffie this summer. I think his contract is $6 million or something like that, but if they were to cut him, only $1 million of it would be dead cap, so they could save $5 or $6 million by moving on from McDuffie. Not saying that I think they will, but they do have depth at that position if they feel like Hopper can take over that third linebacker role. That is something they could do and save a pretty substantial chunk of money doing.
Plus, they'll probably bring back Christian Welch next year too.
Yeah. Yeah, that dude's always sticking around somehow. All right. Next guy I want to talk about, Kingsley Enagbare. What are your thoughts on him? How are you feeling?
I swear every year that guy does nothing all game, and then he'll have one play that you're like, wow, that changed the entirety of the game. He wouldn't have won without that one play. But, yeah, he might be a name that can get a decent amount on the market. I don't know. But I feel like I would rather, like I said before, draft an edge rusher and then rely on Colin Oliver and Barron Sorrell to take over that group. Be kind of the rotation players instead of Enagbare.
Mm-hmm. This may be a hot take for me, but he's actually one of the players I feel like is most important going into next season to try and retain. And the reason I say that is because I think he'll be a relatively cheap price that'll fit in the books pretty well. but also just the role he plays fits what the team needs, especially if they're going to move on from Rashawn Gary. Because think about what's left over. The four DNs we talked about, Micah and Colin are undersized speed rushers. Mike is a good run defender. Colin is not. He was not in college. He will not be in the NFL. That guy is probably as close to a designated pass rusher as you're ever going to get on this team.
Yeah.
Sorrell is he's a little bit undersized, but I feel like he doesn't play super strong. He can occasionally get blocked by a tight end pretty well.
Yeah.
And I feel the exact same way about Lucas Van Ness. So then you have four defensive ends. None of them are really like elite run defenders in the same way that Rashawn Gary is. The closest thing to that is probably Enigbare. I think he's a guy who can come in and eat a lot of early down snaps and then, play on first and second down and free up guys like Colin Oliver and Baron Sorrell and Lucas Van Ness to come out and play on third down. I think that's a really important role for him. And a lot of his pass rush snaps I feel like are kind of bogged down by the fact that he plays that role. You can tell that he doesn't play a 1st and 10 play like a true pass play. And I think that mentality of like, let's set the edge, let's play the run first, and then with whatever we have left over, we'll attack the quarterback, is going to fit really well into what they need. And so I would keep an eye on Enigbare, how he plays down the stretch, and also Bretton Cox. I think both of those guys have a good chance to audition for kind of that who's going to be the innings eater on early downs in 2026. And say you could get Kingsley Enigbare on like a 3-year contract for maybe $20 million, I'd take that for sure. Just because I feel like it's a little risky to go into the draft needing that type of player so bad and just hoping you can get one at some point.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, Kingsley will be one of those names that we've just completely underappreciated the last few years. Again, I don't know if I might be a little lower on him than you, but those are great points you've made. But just thinking about the guys we've had as rotational players in the past 5 or 6 years, we just keep taking that guy for granted, and he keeps hanging around, making plays, keeps making the roster every year when I always say maybe he'll be a cut candidate. Nope. They like that guy a lot.
Yeah. And I remember I said the same thing about him this summer, but I feel like he's been better this year than he has been in the past for sure. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Just a quick stat on him, 14.8% win rate on true pass sets, which is 5th on the team. He's quite a ways behind Devontae Wyatt, who's 2nd at almost 20%, kind of right in the same class as Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, Kingsley's right there. And then I also feel like maybe Baron Sorrell was the other name that was kind of right in there. So for context, Enigbare is at 14.8% win rate. Micah Parsons is first on the team at 31%. So that's the drop-off. That's the drop-off we're about to undergo. 31% with our starting defensive end down to not even half that. So
no, think about it this way, though. They were all at that win rate while Micah was taking double teams on. Now everyone's going one-on-one now.
Yeah. No, it could be rough on Saturday night watching these guys try and get any sort of pressure against such a good Bears offensive line.
Yeah.
Just prep yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, last guy I want to talk about as far as upcoming free agents on the team, Sean Ryan. I've seen a lot of versatility from him, but I think the Packers have settled into feeling like Belton and Banks are the guys they want to be their guards in 2026, which I think is the right decision. Mm-hmm. What have you seen / how are you feeling about Sean Ryan as a potential center and center of the future for this team?
I like it, and I think not having a first-round pick for the next couple of years, this is kind of the guy you got to take a gamble on and say, you know what, let's just pay this guy. He's probably not well-known enough that he's going to demand a huge market. We had a half a season with him at center, and seems like he's done a good, not great job, but he's hanging in there doing a good job. So, I feel like that's just the gamble you need to take at this point so you don't end up with Jacob Monk.
Yeah. Um, I think there's a chance we may look back, and it's different now since I don't feel as much of a Super Bowl aspiration, but leading into last week, I really felt like there's a chance that Elton Jenkins' injury was a blessing in disguise. He just think about how much different the run game is now with Sean Ryan and Anthony Belton at center right guard compared to where
Yeah.
it was with Elton Jenkins, Jordan Morgan at center right guard.
Yeah.
A couple months ago. It feels totally different. It looks totally different. The numbers are totally different. And I think most Packer fans can pretty easily agree on that, right?
Yeah, I totally agree.
So the question is, what type of player at this position specifically do you value more? Do you want a guy who's a little safer in pass protection, or do you want a run blocker? Because and with offensive line, I feel like there's not a ton of great stats. Like you can look at pressure rates allowed and all that, total pressures allowed, but it's different because the assignments on any given player are different. It's not like a player's one-on-one on an island on every single pass blocking snap. So for offensive linemen, I tend to put a lot of stock into PFF grades because I think they do a good job of encompassing like what's going on in the whole play. Sean Ryan is a much better run blocker than Elton Jenkins was. He grades out as the third best run blocker on the team, behind Zach Tom and I believe Darian Kennard, actually.
Yeah, he's way up there.
Yeah. As a pass blocker, though, Elton Jenkins at the center position graded out as a 70.2. Want to take a guess at what Sean Ryan is?
51.
37.
Oh.
Yeah. So it feels better at times, but if that number tells you anything, and I understand you might not, totally agree with what those numbers are, but it's got to be pretty bad at times for the number to be that low in the pass game. Yeah. So
in that same vein, if you have it pulled up, read off Anthony Belton's numbers.
I don't have it pulled up. Sorry.
They were both in the 30s.
Really?
Run and pass block, but I mean, it's fun having him out there. I like it, and those numbers are going to go up.
I've spent a lot of time watching him, and I wrote about him a couple weeks ago after his second game starting. Those numbers are going to go up 100%.
Yeah.
I have no reservations, nothing I'm holding back on as far as Anthony Belton being the guard of the future at this point. Yeah. Okay. So going back to the roster as a whole, we talked about center being a huge need. If you bring Sean Ryan back, that potentially fills that hole. Just wanted to read out a couple other names as far as other center options in free agency or, offensive line depth names that I thought were interesting. Darian Kennard is one we've talked about for sure. He's a restricted free agent. I'd almost say he's a lock to be back. We talked about Sean Ryan as a possible option. If they decide not to go that route, a player that will likely be a little bit more expensive than him, that Spotrac has listed as $11 million value for next year, is Cade Mays. He's a center for the Carolina Panthers right now. And watching that team and the way they run the ball, I've for weeks now been hoping that the Packers can somehow find a way to poach one of the players off that O-line. And he's just an incredibly physical player, but still is much more athletic and assignment sound in the way that he doesn't lose as quickly as Sean Ryan does in the pass game. So if you're looking for an upgrade at center, Cade Mays is a name to keep an eye on. Evan Neal as a reserve option, the former top 10 pick to the Giants. The Packers were reportedly sniffing around him at the trade deadline. I'd be psyched about that, a potential reclamation project opportunity. Could play backup guard or tackle. Another guy we've heard of before, Josh Nijman. If you're looking for a swing tackle just to give you a little bit of insurance, could happen there. Fred Johnson, currently the Eagles' 6th offensive lineman right now, would be a good backup tackle option. And I don't know how to say this name, but he's a guy I've liked every time he's on the field, but Coyote Awasika for the Lions. It's kind of like their first backup on the interior of their O-line. Another guy I'd be psyched about. I think you're going to see the Packers get one guy in free agency who can start at center, and at least one other guy they think could, be a reserve option for them in free agency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just a couple names I thought were interesting there. And then the only other position where there were some names that kind of caught my eye was the D-line, specifically the interior of the D-line. I really feel like they need an upgrade at that position just to get someone who can push the pocket a little better than Colby Wooden is right now.
Mm-hmm.
How would you feel about like a late career ring chasing deal from a guy like Calais Campbell or Cam Jordan?
I could get myself pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Other options?
Did you see the news report today where J.J. Watt said back in 2020?
Oh! I wanted him so bad.
For those of you who didn't hear, I think I remember us talking about how we wanted him.
Yeah.
But
so badly.
The Packers needed pass rush really bad. J.J. Watt, towards the end of his career in 2021, wanted to come back home to Wisconsin and told the Packers, I'll play on $5 million. And they told him no. And he went on to sign with the Cardinals, making like $22 million a year or something.
Yeah, it is. And then that year, I think they went into the next season and started Tyler Lancaster and Dean Lowry as their defensive tackles. And that was the same. That was the same time when they had prime Zadarius Smith, Preston Smith, and young Rashawn Gary as their edges. So they could have had those three and then added J.J. Watt to the interior. Like, that is the type of stuff that makes me so mad. Oh, my gosh. Really wish J.J. Watt wouldn't have said that today.
Oh, yeah, that was bad.
But, yeah, that was one of those where I would refresh Bleacher Report like 30 times a day hoping to see J.J. Watt to the Packers news.
Yeah. Sorry to bring it up. Open.
I actually think that was the same year that the Packers hired Joe Barry to be their D coordinator.
Oh, he probably turned it down.
Oh, man.
He probably thought it was a prank call and hung up.
I'm struggling to come back from that. But back to it. My dream off season is sign a couple offensive linemen like that. Hopefully bring back a guy like Malik Willis, or maybe you just reopen the pipeline and trade for another Titans backup and just bring Will Levis in and make him the next Malik Willis. But I think keeping Quay is going to be huge. I really want them to keep Enigbare. And then ideally you could get a guy like Cade Mays to get a little bit of an upgraded center, but if you have to stick with Sean Ryan, I'm comfortable with that as well. And then bring in some depth, Kennard and some other guys as well. Guys like Chris Brooks I think would be relatively easy to bring back. Tight end like John Fitzpatrick, just to add some depth. And then you attack the draft, and I think you look for corner first, and then I think you look for upgrades at D tackle. You talked about defensive end. I agree with that big time. Add some interior offensive line depth. You probably got to add a backup running back to account for Marshawn Lloyd probably dying again.
Yeah.
And then I think after that you're cooking with gas. Like, there's really not a ton of holes on this team, and the holes that they have are one starter at center and depth that you can easily fill with cheap free agents and or draft picks.
Yeah. I'm feeling pretty good thinking about it that way.
Yeah. So I think the Packers have as good or even a better chance of being a Super Bowl caliber team next year as they did going into this year. Just keep in mind you're going to have a lot of people saying stuff like, oh, they lost Romeo Doubs, they lost Rasheed Walker, they lost Sean Ryan. A lot of these guys can be replaced with as good or better talent that they already have on the team.
And I think just because we need to talk about it before we switch to the Bucs, but often when I talk about the Bucks, I forget to mention Giannis. I get too into the details of all these younger other players because Giannis is just so taken for granted because he's so good. We didn't say the name Jordan Love once on this podcast, but that dude's an animal. Jordan's an athlete. And we talked about 2 years ago against the Niners losing in that playoff game. I was thinking, yeah, but that was Jordan's first full year as a starter, and we were lucky to get to that point. Like, it felt too good to be true to be that deep in the playoffs. But now Jordan Love is a whole different player. He's just getting better every year, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen the rest of this season. I think he's good enough that he could get us to the promised land even without a pass rush. I'm not putting my money on it, but I'm really excited to watch him over these next, hopefully more than 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Yeah, he's elite. I'll say it. Jordan Love is an elite quarterback. 3 straight, man. 3 straight. It's insane.
It's so cool.
All right, well, do you have any other thoughts on the Packers?
That was my closing argument, my closing thought.
My last thought is just wait until Marshawn Lloyd is healthy again in week 9 of 2027.
I totally had the message typed out to you and Dad. I had the message typed out, I'm done on Marshawn Lloyd. And I typed it, deleted it, typed it, deleted it, and then put my phone. Because I was worried you were going to get mad at me. But it's getting ridiculous how he can't stay healthy.
Yeah, I'm never going to quit him, though. Never. The last thing I will say is book it that Micah Parsons is back week 1 next year. I don't have insider information, but I have insider knowledge. He's going to get on a quick rehab plan. He's going to be just fine. He's going to be just fine. I don't see it, lasting into next season. And I know you can't say a lot just based on the way he walked off the field, but there's a difference in rehab outcomes too, based on people who are really debilitated after the injury but before the surgery. He seemed like he walked off pretty good.
So there's grades of tears, you're saying?
Not necessarily, but some people function pretty well even with a torn ACL, and those are the type of people that tend to rehab quicker. And yeah, I feel like what you saw with Christian Watson, he's legitimately having the best season of his career, fresh off a torn ACL. Micah tore his 3 weeks earlier, and I don't see it being any different.
True. Yeah, that gets me excited. Oh, I just hope they can give us something to be excited about through December, through January, so that we don't have to wait the horrible 7 months or whatever it is to get excited about Micah again.
Yeah. How does a Colin Oliver 4-sack game sound?
Trade Micah Parsons if he does that.
Get Kenny Clark back.
Oh, man. All right, well, should we shift gears to the Bucks?
Let's do it.
Okay. So there's a lot to talk about with the Bucks, so we'll try to keep it to 20 or 30 minutes. But first of all, I just wanted to give a little bit of a recap on what's been going on with them, because I'm sure several of you that are listening are more into the Packers than the Bucks. But so dating back to last year in the playoffs, if you remember, Damian Lillard tore his Achilles. So the Bucks had an upcoming offseason where they had their second best player that they're paying $60 million a year. He had a torn Achilles, wasn't going to play a game this whole season. So the Bucks made a ballsy decision. They waive and stretch his contract, meaning they have to pay him $25 million a year over the next 4 years, which is crazy. First time in history someone's done something like that. And they do that so they can go get the best free agent on the market, Miles Turner. Miles Turner gets brought in as a Brook Lopez replacement. As Bucks fans, we got excited seeing that they're going to be younger, they're going to be faster, more athletic, be able to do more than they could with the old heads like Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton that they've been dealing with the last few years. Going into this season, the media was quite a bit lower than I would say we were as Bucks fans, saying this Bucks team is going to be in the play-in. I thought they might be, in the 4-5 seed range. They could still be a solid team with Giannis. They started out the season really well. started out 4-1 after 10 games. I think they were 7-3. Felt really good about the direction they were heading. They looked younger. They looked faster. This team is built with Giannis and a ton of shooters, so it's fun to see Giannis driving and kicking, and the Bucks just nailing threes. But they lost their starting point guard, Kevin Porter Jr., in the first game of the season, 10 minutes in, and they were able to weather the storm for a little bit without him. They even had games where Giannis was out too, and they still won. But then quickly it started going back to what we're used to the last few years under Doc Rivers, where they play a team like the Brooklyn Nets or the Wizards, where it seems like they should at least win the game, or especially they should be winning those games by 15 to 20 points. But they would drop those games or make it really close. There was a game early in the season when they were healthy with Giannis against the 1-13 Pacers, and it came down to Giannis buzzer beater to beat them, even though the Pacers were missing like 8 players. So it quickly turned. Even with Giannis, the Bucks were dropping games they shouldn't, and we had a couple of young guys, Ryan Rollins, Kyle Kuzma has been great actually, but individually it seems all the players have been playing decent. Not all of them. Kyle Kuzma, Ryan Rollins, Kevin Porter Jr. when he's back, Giannis, even some games with Miles Turner. We've seen the players. AJ Green, thank you. He's been awesome. A lot of these players are playing good individual basketball, but the coaching, I think the coaching has been a big issue. The Bucks' biggest issue is rebounding. Here's a stat for you. In the 27, first of all, the Bucks are 11-16. They're the 10 seed right now, barely in the play-in tournament. One of the bottom teams in the East. Despite starting 7-3, now they're 11-16. Rebounding has been their biggest issue. Of the 27 games they've played, they've only won the rebounding battle 5 times. They've lost the rebounding battle 22 games. And most of the games that they've won are those 5 where they've won the rebounding battle. So we know how important that is in basketball. So the season started out great. Giannis has missed quite a bit of time. 2 different stints where he's been out a couple weeks. He's currently out. But with them losing all these games, the Giannis trade rumors are stronger than ever. As Bucks fans, we're starting to realize, okay, Giannis is getting frustrated. This is the first time where the team has genuinely just been really bad. And, we're just having to deal with these news outlets every day saying, hey, this is a possible Giannis trade, or different things. Where Brian Windhorst from ESPN came out and said, oh yeah, Giannis already requested a trade. That night, Doc Rivers has a press conference and says, no, that's not true. The next day, Brian Windhorst goes back on his podcast and says, yeah, that's not true. He never requested a trade. So it's just been all this up and down. It's been hard to watch the Bucks lose over and over again. But, sorry, I'm just rambling. So many things are going on that it's hard to focus on one or two things. But what have you seen from the Bucks? What are your feelings about them right now?
I was going to say real quick, the only good thing is seeing Windhorst and Shams just continually just get all their tweets or reports get debunked by guys like Eric Nem and Chris Haynes. Even they're just getting out scooped by everybody, and I love seeing it from those two because I hate those guys so much.
Yeah, they suck.
But I'm with you on the coaching, because it really is an interesting thing. You bring up a good point saying that you can go down the roster and look at singular players, and like even a guy like Gary Harris, I had very low expectations for him, but there's been times where he's been pretty key in certain moments. Like he's not winning or losing games for them, but he's giving them good minutes off the bench and playing an important role. I feel like I've been pretty disappointed in Bobby.
Yep.
Sims too is not my favorite player, but he does somewhat well most of the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm no basketball X's and O's super tactician, but you can kind of get the sense that when all these players that have skill sets that should work together well, that they're just not.
Yeah.
Then there's a common denominator in it, and I feel like it's pretty clear. And going back to Doc too, did anybody in the NBA circle really think that Doc Rivers was going to be a great hire for the Bucks? They kind
Yeah.
of did it because that's what was left over. But I mean, what percent of the NBA world would have been like really eager to see how Doc looked as the coach of the Bucks? Because he had failed multiple times in recent history before that.
Yeah. And the thing with Doc is he's not a basketball sicko anymore. You look at some of these young coaches, they're living and breathing basketball. They're trying to, put food on the table for their family by staying employed because you know how ridiculous the coaching uh, carousel is in the NBA. And so Doc Rivers knows, hey, if I get fired here, I'm just going to go back to ESPN and go do some broadcasting, stuff like that, because he's great at networking. He has all these connections and stuff, and I think that's a big deal with why he got hired, is because he had connections with all these guys. But you can tell, like, they had another press conference with him today, and he basically took no accountability for anything that's going on. He said, oh, the players just aren't playing their hardest. And then Jim Ozarski, one of the beat reporters, he was like, hey, Doc, you say, like, they're not playing their hardest. Well, can you get them to? Like, can this be coached? And he's like, nope, just everyone has their different personalities and set of emotions, and so there's nothing I can control. They're all gonna, be acting the way they want to act, and I can't control that. I think Doc has lost the locker room, and you see that they beat the Celtics the other night because Bobby came out and went 12 for 12 or something. Like, he was just on a heater. And you see, some of those guys we already mentioned just go out there and make shots, and that allows them to win some games. But the second that they're not making those shots, he has no idea how to make adjustments. In games where it comes down to the wire, instead of drawing up a play for the final 20 seconds to hit a game-winning shot, he says, Ryan Rollins, go out there and play ISO and try to get a bucket. And then when that doesn't work, they have nothing to go to. And so, the X's and O's, the plays, it's been a real problem. I get the Bucks are already paying 3 coaches. They're still paying their last 2 coaches as well. But if you want to do right by Giannis, get someone that's going to have the locker room, the players are going to trust him and want to work hard for him, because I think he's lost them.
Yeah. One last thing I want to say about Doc before we move on. I think it was KPJ that gave a locker room press conference the other day. It might have been today, actually. And he said something like, we just need to get to a point where everyone on the team has a equal competitive spirit or like desire to be here. And I felt it when I was listening to it, and then reading the comments, a lot of other people agree with me. I don't think he's talking about a player. I think the players are bringing the juice, and it's got to be so frustrating if you're a player bringing the juice and doing your best, and then the guy that's supposed to be leading you is just not engaged in the way he should be.
Yeah. No, it's tough. And I think there's too many cooks in the kitchen, too. I don't know how assertive all the assistants are, but he brought in, 4 of big names to be his assistant coaches, and I'm sure Doc is dominating all those conversations, and they just kind of have to do what he wants to do. And so my hope, I told Drew this, my hope is that they fire him and just let Rondo come in. And even if there's some growing pains, Rajon Rondo is currently a assistant who helps with the point guards. Just let that guy take over, or even Darvin Ham, just something different.
Yeah, I hope it's not Darvin Ham. I mean, we've seen it from Doc many times now. We saw it. It was bad at the end of Ham's tenure in LA.
Yeah.
So you might as well just give Rondo an extended job interview and let him give it a shot. And if it doesn't work, it can't be that much worse than what it is with Doc right now, and just do the whole interview process over in the summer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been tough. So that's the biggest thing. But I wanted to give a couple of stats real quick to show the gravity of this. So this goes back to, there's been some players that are playing great basketball. The Bucks, shooting-wise, something that's been a problem for them in the past, they are flamethrowers, and they're still losing these games. If we look at the stats, 3-point percentage, the Bucks are first, 40.4% from 3. Listen to the next 5 teams on that list. So it goes Bucks, then Nuggets, Rockets, Timberwolves, Knicks, Thunder. Think about where those teams are in the standings. Next, we're going to go. So, first of all, 3-point attempts. You might say, oh, they're not taking very many shots. They're 13th, so they're middle of the pack, but still, middle of the pack with the best percentages, pretty solid. Um, but then we go to the advanced stats. Um, I don't fully understand these stats, but um, one is effective field goal percentage. So this is the percentage of shots that they're getting good looks and they're making those looks. The Bucks are second in effective field goal percentage in the league. Again, number one, the Nuggets, then the Thunder, the Lakers, the Timberwolves, the Knicks. True shooting percentage. The Bucks are fifth. The teams ahead of them: Nuggets, Lakers, Thunder, Timberwolves. So this is a team that is shooting the ball extremely well, but they're dead last in rebounding rate, and it's not even close. Stuff like that. So it's just been so hard to watch this team. They'll have a good defensive possession and then just quit on the boards. And the biggest problem, I laughed at it when the Pacers fans were talking about it, but Miles Turner makes me so mad watching him try to rebound the basketball. And I think he's not the only problem, but okay, I just have to vent for a second about this. Every time, say, how the other team will make a shot, and then, a player from the Bucks has to go grab the ball and pass it out of bounds to push the ball up the court. Yeah. After every made shot, if he's right under the basket, instead of grabbing it like any other center would and passing it to his guard, he sees the ball come through the hoop and just pushes it out of bounds and runs up the court. At least twice a game, Ryan Rollins will say, "Miles, what the hell? What are you doing?" Because it completely stops the possession. Miles wants to run up and get set for a three-point shot or something, but forces the team to slow down, go grab the ball, pass it back out of bounds. So he does stuff like that, and then just rebounding, he doesn't show much energy, and that's why that guy gets taken off the court. All the fans are complaining. Doc Rivers isn't playing Miles Turner, even though they just paid him a ton of money. Yes, Doc probably should play him more in the fourth quarter and stuff. He's playing Bobby instead, who's not much better of a rebounder these days. But the effort is a problem for a few of these players, and I'd like to see more out of them.
Yeah. I wondered when they brought him in, because obviously that was a huge problem, the rebounding thing dating back years in Indiana. I wonder if they didn't do enough research into the difference in rebounding between Brook Lopez and Miles Turner. Because Lopez was another guy, he didn't get a ton of boards, but he freed up others by being just a mountain in the middle and just boxing everybody out. And you don't, obviously Turner has a totally different body type. He would never be able to do that quite like Lopez does. But I feel like rebounding, man, it's just such an effort thing. There's skill involved in it, but if you want to be a good rebounder, you can at least be serviceable when you're as big as Miles Turner if you just try.
Yeah, but it's hard to watch, and a big thing too is the Bucks starting lineup this whole season basically has been AJ Green or Gary Trent at the 3.
Yeah, they don't have a small forward.
Yeah, they're just undersized, and so I think that's a good transition into what we want to talk about here. Let's first go with the idea of Giannis is going to stay. I think from some of the comments we've heard from people close to Giannis, like Chris Haynes said, Giannis's intention is he sees a wall in front of him and he wants to run through that wall. He wants to make this work, but if it's really not going anywhere, then he might potentially ask out. But let's go from the mindset that they're going to make this work. What do you think the Bucks should do at the trade deadline?
I feel like I don't know. It's so hard because they need a small forward. They need something, but for the first time in a while, I feel like there's hope on this team outside of Giannis. And I feel that way about Ryan Rollins, AJ Green, KPJ, and then also Miles Turner a little bit as well, even with the deficiencies. Mm-hmm. Where there's like hope that these guys can turn into real players on a good team. Obviously, they'll never be Giannis type players or really even all-star level players, but they're good pieces. For a while, it felt like they'd never had good pieces other than Giannis, Drew, Chris, or Dame. It's like they have the stars and they have just a bunch of misfit toys around them. So it finally feels like they have good pieces. And it would suck to part with any of those guys, but 3 of them are guards. And so I wonder if do they package, a Bobby Portis salary and then throw in Ryan Rollins as, something that another team would actually want to go get. And I haven't done much trade machine work, but I don't know. It would just make me sad, and I don't want it to be getting older again. Because if you get older again, you're just right back in the same position, and then our picks in the 2030s get even that much more valuable, and then it becomes a whole problem.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying, hey, trade for Zach LaVine. There is stock in it when people say, okay, so the problem with the Bucks this year has been the other team doesn't really have to respect anyone except for Giannis when they're playing defense. So bringing in a guy like Zach LaVine would change that. But also, you're the only salaries that can really send out that will match a guy like that are Bobby and Kyle Kuzma. And Kuzma, I said at the beginning of the year, I really hope he plays well until the trade deadline so that they can flip him for something else. But Kuzma might be our second or third best player this season.
Mm-hmm.
He's been so fun to watch in the Giannis light role where he comes off the bench and just does exactly what Giannis does, just at a lesser level. But defensively he's been great. He's one of the only guys that rebounds. He's super fun to watch finish around the rim. I really have enjoyed Kyle Kuzma this year. But
Here's
he's
the
really
only thing I'll say on that, though, is because Kuzma is really enjoyable to watch in the games that Giannis isn't playing. But if Giannis is healthy playing 38 minutes a game, do you feel quite the same way about Kuzma? And I still think he's good when Giannis is out there too. But he pops more when he's not having to coexist with Giannis and or stagger minutes with him.
Yeah, no, that's true. He's just important in those no Giannis minutes.
Yeah.
But, that's what's hard is that's a good point, Drew. I think it would be more important to have a small forward you could always trust out there with Giannis. But even if we traded Kuzma for a small forward that's going to be good, then we still only have one wing on the roster, being that guy we just traded for. So, it's got to be – those guards are so likable, Rollins, KBJ, and Green. And I hope we can make something work without him, but it's got to be Bobby's contract that we send out. So, honestly, at this point, I'm hoping for fire Doc, make some small trades on the margins, get rid of your Bobby, trade Gary Trent maybe, guys like that, and try to bring in someone that can help you on the margins and keep mostly the same roster together. Because I don't think no matter what they do, this team is not going to contend for a championship.
No.
So sending out first-round picks to try to compete, I think is so stupid. So if Horst sends out a single first-round pick for someone that makes the team older, I'm going to have to check out for a while. It's going to really frustrate me. I'm not going to get excited about whoever they trade for.
Especially because, I guess I haven't checked the West standings in a little bit, but the Pelicans are still losing a lot, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Bucks are likely going to control their own first-round pick in a year where they're not doing too hot. So if they end up getting a borderline lottery pick, because with as few picks as they have and limited cap space that they have with the Dame stretch, like this pick, especially if it ends up being like low teens or something like that, they have to nail that pick.
Yeah. They really have to. And that's why I'm saying trade Bobby Portis, try to get a cheaper wing to come in there and just, make that group better. And then go draft a starting small forward with your top 15 pick, top 10 pick, whatever it ends up being. Because the Bucks right now are in. Giannis is going to come back soon, and I bet they'll make the play-in. I don't see them being above the play-in by the end of the season. It might be a battle to even get to that point. So they really could have a high pick, and I think that should be the priority. But I'm really worried about John Horst because he's the mindset of, Giannis hasn't asked for a trade. Even all these rumors are going out there. He hasn't asked for a trade. So let's just pretend that he's still super happy and wants to win a championship. So all these rumors are saying he's going to go out there and go head hunting, try to get some big name players, but that's going to require either first round picks or some of these young guys that we love.
Yeah, and it's probably going to be both, to be honest, if they're really going to go big game hunting. And I saw that report too and thought, I knew you wanted to talk about what we think Horst would do, and that's probably the answer. But comparing that to what I would do, that's not what I would do. Yeah. Because I think there's so much more value in just making some small trades. Because like the small trade they made last year when they swapped Beauchamp for KPJ, that's totally changed this season as it did last season. So try and recreate something like that on the margins that will help you this year, but then also set yourself up to have bird rights or opportunity to just have a player on the roster for next season that will make a huge difference. Do what you can with the cap space and bring in some guys for cheap, but you've got to set yourself up to hit on that pick and try and get hopefully a wing to come in and give you some depth for next year. But yeah, there's just no trade that is going to thread the needle of making you competitive and potentially contending for a championship this year without just further dooming the franchise for the future. Where I feel like you can more easily thread that needle by, let's make the play in this year if we can, maybe sneak into the back end of the playoffs, but we'll get a top half pick, we'll nail that pick, we'll set ourselves up to be more aggressive next year with the money and the picks that we have. But like, just we finally have something good under the age of 25 is finally budding on this roster. Let's not kill it to go get something that's going to just kill us even more in the future.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I said at the beginning of this season that I think this team is going to be very up and down. There's going to be some really fun hot streaks and some really low lows, but I never thought it would be this low. we didn't say the number, but they were coming off 2 days ago a loss to the Brooklyn Nets, who I believe had 5 wins at the time. And they lost not only by like 5 or 10, they lost by 47 points. I was listening to a Bucks podcast where they said the top 5 worst losses of the Bucks franchise history, and that was number 3 in terms of points they've given up, and it was against the Nets. And so the Bucks have some serious soul searching to do, but I think that's all it is. They got to find it within themselves. They got to fire their coach, but I think they haven't had enough full health, to go on a real run this season. So I would hate to see them trade a bunch of these players to try to fix it when it's probably already on their roster what they want, the best possible scenario. But yeah, going after a 2-timeline situation like the Warriors had when they won their most recent championship, where they sucked for a couple of years and got Jordan Poole and some of these young guys as they brought in to be on that separate timeline from Curry and Draymond. That's what the Bucks have the opportunity to do. Keep Miles and Giannis together and then just develop those young players and give them one more shot. But it's definitely dire right now.
The problem is I feel like, barring injury, Giannis is never going to let the Bucks be bad enough to really go to the top of the draft like the Warriors did back in the day.
Yeah.
And I know James Wiseman, the pick they had, didn't end up panning out anyway, but the Bucks have been smart to get, they almost blew it with Ryan Rollins this offseason, but they've been smart enough to bring in some guards that have really helped them without having really high picks.
Yeah.
If they can just do 1 or 2 more moves like that, and then they've got to nail this pick going forward, you'd have a deep stable of guards, and Giannis and Turner on the front court, fill that out with what you can, and I think that's a competitive team with a new coach.
Yeah, those, I'm going to go watch some more of the videos after this, but the press conference today was really bad for Doc and all the players. And so I just pray John Horst is watching that. But also, I'm worried Horst is not going to fire him because he's already paying 3 coaches. But if you care about Giannis like Horst does, you got to get someone else in there.
Yeah. You can definitely lose your job at a press conference, that's for sure.
Yep, you can.
Hopefully Doc did it.
That's what happened with the Nuggets coach last year. He's very similar.
The thing I hate about Doc is if he were to get fired, right now, if we got a notification that he got fired, I bet he would be on a golf course teeing off somewhere in Southern California by 11 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Yep.
And I think that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah. The only other good thing I wanted to say about the Bucks is the one thing I've really enjoyed is Wesley Matthews became the play-by-play commentary guy for the Bucks. He fills in for Marcus Johnson when he's not there. You don't have league pass, so you don't get to hear him, but he's super super good. So it's fun to have Wes back, hear his commentary. He a lot of the players that are on the team right now, he still has already played with us, so it's fun to hear him talk.
I have missed out on that because, so I'm just gonna admit to everybody that I watch games on Stream East, um, but you don't get to choose like which broadcast you get. You just get whatever one is pirated. So I've only watched like I think 2 games since Giannis got hurt most recently, um, and both times I feel like the last 4 or 5 times I've gone on to watch a game, it's always the other team's broadcast that's being pirated. So
Oh,
I
dang.
haven't been able to like listen to the Bucks announcers in a while. I've been missing Lisa in my life. I need more Lisa.
Yeah, I like Lisa. Lisa, Marcus, and Wes is a really good rotation. I'm glad we got
Yeah.
Steve Novak out of there.
Yeah, I like Marcus a lot. He's funny.
Yeah. But yeah,
All right. Well, anything else you want to hit?
I don't think so. If any of you got bored, I'm sorry, but this was just a good session for me and Drew to get all of our thoughts out, voice our opinions, kind of mourn with each other a little bit about Micah Parsons and the Bucks. But um, we're gonna be diehard fans regardless. I was thinking about if Giannis gets traded, are there any destinations where I would just become a fan of that team? And I don't think I could do it. We might be going through some dark days here in the future, but we're going to stick it out and we're going to share our thoughts no matter what.
Ride or die, cuh.
Ride or die.
Yeah, I'm with you. And good news at least is now that I've finished my internship and I actually have a life again, we'll hopefully be able to do this on a weekly basis
Yeah.
again. So looking forward to more podcast episodes with you that feel a little bit less like a funeral and more like a celebration, but still
Yep.
enjoyed this one.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on the Kip and Chip Sports Podcast. Do 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 do.